I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Survivor 46 is here, and so is On Fire, the only official Survivor podcast, and we have a twist this season. The winner of Survivor 45, Dee Valladares, will be joining us every week.
We're going behind the scenes of the biggest moments, the how and the why things happen, and the strategy and analysis you can only get from someone like me, a Survivor winner.
Listen to On Fire, the official Survivor podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Stephen Krajcik of the Lotto Jumbo team as well, and Adam Yates of Orica Green Edge, and Anthony Turgis, who had a little bit of a tumble as he headed in towards Scarborough but stayed on his bike.
Great Britain have won their first medal. It was Adam Peaty in a world record time, breaking his own world record.
She punches the air and she crosses that blue finish line. The world champion of 12 months ago, who finished second here last time around, has won it.
The athlete's village is not a place for fighting. I've never heard that ever in Olympic and Paralympic history.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast, covering the games all the time rather than just once every 4 years. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and coming up in this episode, it's déjà vu for the Commonwealth Games Federation. Another host city, the preferred bidder for the 100-year anniversary games, has pulled out.
Apart from that, we'll be talking about British success in the pool and on the bike at the Para Swimming World Championships in Manchester, and the ongoing World Cycling Championships taking place in Scotland, hosted by Glasgow.
And a stink in the Seine as Olympic swimming test event is cancelled.
You can always have your say at Anything But F on whatever Twitter is called these days. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can also see us on Threads. Why not drop us a message if there's anything we say on the podcast that you would like to pick us up on? Then go to our website, anythingbutfooty.com, and you can find the Contact Us form there. Before we get on then to the stink in the Seine, which I think sounds quite poetic, by the way, let's talk about the latest comings and goings. And when I say comings and goings, I mean mainly goings, for the Commonwealth Games Federation, because you might recall a couple of weeks ago, we brought you a special edition of the podcast. That was following the withdrawal of Victoria as the 2026 hosts. And now it looks as though we are looking for a host city or a host region or some kind of solution for 2030 as well, because the 2030 Games, the Centenary Games, as John said, was expected to be hosted back in Canada as the 1930 Games were. Alberta had put themselves forward. They had a bid which was planned for Calgary, which you might recall hosted the 1988 Olympic Winter Games. Those were the games of Eddie the Eagle Edwards. Also, Edmonton was planned. They've previously hosted World Athletics Championships. But the Minister for Tourism in Alberta has said it's not a good deal for taxpayers. Costs, again, are the issue. And this comes hot on the heels of that decision in Australia for Victoria, the host region for 2026, to pull out. Now, the Youth Commonwealth Games are currently taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. You could say that is good or bad timing, depending on which side of the fence you are. That means that the Commonwealth Games Federation Chief Executive Kate Sadlier has had to answer questions about this. She has suggested that they could now wait to 2027 for the next Games. That one is of obviously, as I said, after Victoria pulled out. She's also now opened up these ideas, and these are things that we have discussed on the podcast, about a different type of staging. She was talking about a pan-continent staging, saying, obviously, maybe this is an opportunity for nations in Africa who have never staged the Games to come together. This is something we have spoken about in the past. We've talked about maybe different Commonwealth nations hosting different sports, something like this. Another solution, I'll just throw this one at you, make London the permanent home for the Commonwealth Games. We've talked about a permanent home for an Olympic Winter Games because of the expense of hosting it and not many countries, cities, regions wanting to step up. London, Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, it would be a tremendous legacy event from 2012. Use the London Stadium, use the Copper Box, use the Velodrome, use the Aquatics Centre, tap into the Excel Centre, Wembley Arena, whatever you want, Hammersmith Apollo, if that's still a thing. I mentioned Earls Court on a previous podcast. Apparently it's been knocked down, but I'm a northerner, so I don't know this kind of stuff. Adopted northerner. I think that could be another solution. Now, if London were to say, yes, look, a bit like bringing the Christmas decorations out the loft every year. If London could say, look, we're the new permanent host of the Commonwealth Games, every 4 years, we'll get the stuff out the loft, we can put the games on. If another city, another region, or another solution presents itself, absolutely fine. Let's run with that. But I think the London opportunity is there. The Mayor of London has already sort of stated that he might be interested in stepping in. And I think the fact it would only be once every 4 years would still make it special. And I think it would be a great thing to bring back to Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, bring the crowds back in, and know that the infrastructure, the connectivity and everything is already there.
The headlines were pretty damning last week when this Alberta announcement came out. It really felt like this was the end, and this was like, this is never going to happen now. This Commonwealth Games, as we've known it, is not going to continue. And I saw quite a lot of criticism. I think there was a stat on the BBC at one point when I was listening where it said only one country, apart from Australia and the UK, has staged the Games in the last 20 years. Now, I think that's a relevant point to make. It was Delhi in 2010. I don't think it was a huge success in terms of changing the landscape of the Commonwealth Games and not really doing much, particularly for sport in India. But the issue I've got, to say it's all over, people aren't saying they don't want to be part of the Commonwealth. What they're saying is they don't want to host it. And so I agree with you that I think that's what it comes down to. Are people saying... I mean, there are people in the world saying that the Commonwealth is a thing that should not happen and it's going to come to an end, blah, 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 blah. But that's a different discussion from the Commonwealth Games Federation. I don't think people are saying they don't want to take part. We saw that in Birmingham. The Canadians enjoy, the Jamaicans, they all want to, at the moment, they all still want to be part of it. So let's find a permanent base. It doesn't have to be London. Michael's given some great examples as to why it should be. But is there another place in Australia that want to do it? Or, as you say, do you look at regions and making sure that everybody tries to do it? So it's Trinbago, isn't it? That's what they've called it. Hashtag Trinbago with Trinidad and Tobago. And I think the issue that the Commonwealth Games Federation probably has is that they're staging this youth games, as you say, the first time since that's happened since 2017. And look, this generated big names. Tom Dean, the Olympic champion, he won silver in Bahamas 6 years ago and gold as well in his 2 events in the swimming pool. Dina Asher-Smith became the fastest British woman, of course, we know in history, took 2 gold medals from the Isle of Man in 2011. So there is a kind of history to it, but I agree that's probably too much. You need to look at putting one event on every 4 years and whether that is bringing more youths into it and changing the way that it's done rather than having separate entities. So here's a youth games and here's the Commonwealth Games. That's another huge question mark for Kate Sadlier and her team moving forward. And it's difficult because I think... As I said, I think the majority of people still want it. It still has a purpose and a benefit to it, but it is, where is it going to be held each time?
And I think one of the issues is we've had this kind of Commonwealth Games arms race And certainly that's been accelerated in the last 25, 30 years. I mean, if you go back and look at pictures of the Edinburgh Commonwealth Games in 1986, it was nothing like the size and the scale of what we witnessed in Birmingham in 2022. You talk about Delhi. I mean, Delhi was beset by so many issues in 2010. But if you actually go back and review some of the arenas and some of the coverage, I mean, watch the opening and closing ceremonies, as I have recently, for the 2010 Commonwealth Games in Delhi. They were spectacular. They were akin to an opening ceremony for an Olympic Games. If India wanted to, if you like, present its postcard to the world, its offer, that was an amazing show. The Delhi opening ceremony was unbelievable. The stadium that hosted the opening ceremony was an unbelievable venue for it. It's got too big. It's got too expensive. And I think this idea that Birmingham did, which was a kind of city compact games, is probably not that workable moving forward. But if you look at what they were going to do in 2026, it was very much a region-wide games. Now, we know that regions in Australia are big.
Yes.
Regions in this country are small. So I put forward Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park as a permanent host to the Commonwealth Games. What about a Northern Powerhouse bid? I mean, we hear a lot, don't we, from central government about the Northern Powerhouse. Because actually, if you were to stage a games from, say, Sheffield to Edinburgh, that's not actually geographically that big a distance to go from. You could use the arena in Sheffield. You could use Ponds Forge in Sheffield. You could use the John Charles Pool for diving in Leeds. You've got an arena in Leeds. You've got an arena in Sheffield. I know that they've hosted squash at the KC Stadium in Hull before. You've got a velodrome in Manchester. You've got a velodrome in Glasgow, which we're seeing at the World Championships at the minute. Could it be pulled together in that way? And actually, when you put the athletes back at the front and centre of the games, which is what it should be, the travelling distances aren't that bad. They're not going to be as bad as they were with the Victoria bid, for example. So I think just with a little bit of imagination, I think we can see a future for the Games, because you're absolutely right. People don't want the Commonwealth Games to end. I think we just need to find a new way of staging it.
Yeah, because India were trying with Birmingham last year. They were annoyed that certain events weren't in Birmingham, so they staged some, I think it was archery, wasn't it, and shooting.
Shooting was definitely a discussion, wasn't it? That
yeah,
they were going to set up a kind of parallel event.
Yeah. So as I said, there is the demand for it, but we just need to somehow find the funding, as with all these things, or is, as you say, is there one place that can host it permanently?
Well, one event that is taking place at the moment, and from what I saw of the weekend, despite some of the Storm Anthony, I think it was at the weekend, wasn't it? Has looked successful so far as the World Cycling Championships being hosted, centred around Glasgow, former Commonwealth Games host city.
Yeah, 8,000 riders are competing in lots of different events. There's going to be up to 200 world champions crowned in this event. It's got another week to go. And probably the story of the weekend, Michael, was that superb victory in the team pursuit gold for Katie Archibald, along with Eleanor Barker, Anna Morris and Josie Knight, and also Eleanor's sister Meg was part of the team as well. But what an achievement for Archibald, the local cyclist, making a return from injury following the death of her partner and fellow cyclist Rob Wardell after cardiac arrest at their home last year. And Archibald spoke so well to the media before the event, and she said she was in no way and in no form to actually win. Well, she was a huge part of the team, came back into that final, and they won. They beat New Zealand by more than 4 seconds, and that was their first World Championship title since 2014. It was a brilliant performance from British cycling and from Katie Archibald in particular, but also Eleanor Barker, she's a new mum. Anna Morris was a junior doctor, worked through COVID times as well, and Josie Knight is a close friend and a housemate of Archibald. So great team, and you've got to add Meg Barker to that. Laura Kenny coming back at some point, one assumes as well. It's looking good for British cycling once again in the team pursuit. The big things to look out for in the weeks to come, and we'll run through some of the other medals because it's well worth looking at. But I also thought the men's road race from Edinburgh to Glasgow was pretty impressive as well, despite the 50-minute delay where 5 people were arrested for protesting on the course. And we've always said this, it's impossible to police a whole course like that, and no criticism really of that. They got it going when they could get it going, and people want to have their say about things, and they had their say about things. Next weekend, it's the women's elite race from Loch Lomond to Glasgow, so it'll be interesting to see on that. Well done to the Netherlands, Mathieu van der Poel, who won the road race in Glasgow, and great scenes there. So what's fantastic is that Great Britain are top of the medals table as we're recording, 6 golds and 17 medals in total. And in paracycling, they're top as well. 14 golds, 24 in total. And I thought this was worth highlighting because we talk a lot about France ahead of the Paris Paralympics next summer as well, Michael. British cycling, 14 golds top. Second, France, 5 golds and 8 medals compared to 24. We know that France are really investing in all of the Olympic and Paralympic sports, but there's a huge gap there, and it's great to see the paracyclists absolutely flying. A few to mention: Sophie Unwin and Jenny Hull on the tandem. They've won 3 gold medals, 3 world titles, a 17th world title for Neil Fackie, along with Matt Rotherham on the tandem, a 14th consecutive 1 kilometre time trial world championship for Jodie Cundy. That dates back to 2006. Can you remember what you were doing in 2006? Because I can't. I mean,
it was before goal line technology. That was the Frank Lampard goal that never was at the World Cup. That's all I remember about 2006.
Well, there you go, you see. And it shows the dominance of him. Kadina Cox, Archie Atkinson and Finn Graham finally denying his British teammate Jaco van Gas in the Omnium last night was a particular highlight. Gas has won 2 golds himself, but Finn Graham finally getting one up on him. We're going to see the likes of Tom Pidcock and Evie Richards in the mountain bike. We've got Lizzie Dynan and Dame Sarah Story in the road races, and of course next weekend, well worth keeping an eye on this, the indoor cycling events which are effectively routines, so artistic swimming on wheels, and then cycle ball, which is a football, and you have to use the wheels to score goals. You're not allowed to use your feet at all to kick the ball. So lots more to come in the cycling. I think it's, as you said, they're putting on a great show in Glasgow, and plenty more to keep our eye on in the days to come.
Few observations from me. 2006, also the year of the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. Remember the ceremony there with the train coming down from the sky, or the tram coming down from the sky. Remember that. And also I was listening to you on BBC Radio 5 Live last night, as it was as we record. And it was brilliant to hear Nia Evans with you on Radio 5 Live, talking from Glasgow. Of course, one of those British cyclists that we talk about a lot. Someone that we have followed on this podcast, a world Olympic medalist, as we know.
Yeah, she's competing. She's competing in the Madison this week. And
what I thought was
race.
Fantastic was just her making herself available to be there on a Sunday night to do that in the middle, if you like, of a world championship, because that is what these sports, the likes of athletics and swimming and cycling and rowing, I think, we want to tell the stories. We want to get to know the personalities. And the way we're going to do that is by hearing from the likes of Nia Evans on the radio with you on a Sunday night talking about the games. Because, how many times do people go into the World Championships or whatever? They go into their bubble, the athletes, and that's absolutely agreeable, acceptable, understandable, because it's all about the performance. And then you don't hear from them until the very end. So it was quite refreshing, I think, for Nia just to be available in the middle of a championship, in the middle of her schedule, to talk and offer some insights. I always remember the first time I met Nia was on a tram in 2018 on the Gold Coast at the Commonwealth Games. And I was required to do a live interview for Talk Sport. And they said, "We need you now." So I got my laptop out and I got my little bit of kit out, and I perched, and I found out I was sitting on someone's feet. And it was Nia Evans.
You could have damaged her entirely in her cycling career.
I know. So we've always, whenever we've met, we've always spoken about the time I broadcast live to the UK from Australia whilst perched on her feet. And I should also just mention one of the listeners to the podcast, Nigel Hull, of course, Jenny Hull's dad, who is very high up, one of the big cheeses at British curling as well. No, he's been a guest, hasn't he, on Great British Bosses before. So, great to see success there as well. And you talk about the para-cycling success. Can I talk about the para-swimming success?
Absolutely. It's been going on in Manchester this week, hasn't it? The Para World Swimming Championships.
Yeah, 500 athletes, 67 nations, a British team of 27, so a slimline team. But wait for this, 38 medals.
Woo.
What a meet for British swimming. The event is a qualifier for the Paris Paralympics as well. Just going to mention some of the highlights. Ellie Chalice won 3 golds, 2 silvers and a bronze. Poppy Maskell won a gold, 2 silvers and a bronze. So the total for British swimming, 14 golds, 11 silver and 9 bronze medals. Italy topped the medals table. Then it was China. And really good to see Ukraine. 49 medals in total, third on the medals table, more than any other nation actually with 49 medals, 17 of those golds. And just to run through the Paris Swimming World Championship, opening night there was a Great Britain 1-2-3 in the S14 200 metres freestyle, Jessica Jane Applegate, Bethany Firth and Louise Fiddis. The second night, another Great Britain 1-2-3. This time Bethany Firth went from silver to gold. Poppy Maskell in the silver medal position. Georgia Sheffield in the bronze medal position. That was in the S14 100 metres backstroke. Other mentions, I can't mention everybody. We simply don't have the time. Alice Ty, Rebecca Redfern reclaimed titles they won in 2019. Maisie Summers-Newton, third successive medley world title for her. Great Britain's S14 quartet in the mixed 4x100 metres freestyle relay. Faye Rogers with a first world gold in the S1 in the 100 metres butterfly, the European record there. And Susanna Hex won a gold in the 50 metres free, S5 free, and then a bronze in the 200 metres, bookending the championships by winning medals on the first and the last night.
Incredible stuff. Stephen Clegg, I think, also won quite a few medals for the men's representatives, including a gold in the early days. So great to see British swimming and the para swimmers and the paracyclists, as we say, also looking really good ahead of the Paralympics next summer.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. Stay with us. We'll have our roundup of our news from the Games next.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
This is Anything But Footy. Now, before we go on to talk about the real stink in Paris, which John is going to tell us a little bit more about, I just want to mention that one of my aims for summer of 2023 is to watch some of the official Olympic films. I'm going off script here. John does not know what's coming up. So there are official films of all the Olympic Games. Well, not all of the Olympic Games, but some of the more recent ones. So the official film of London 2012, watch that. It's called First. I'm going with some of the games that I've got good memories of. Sydney 2000's official film is called Stories of Olympic Glory. Marathon, the official film of the Barcelona Games in 92. And Everlasting Flame is the official film of the Beijing Olympics in 2008. So, Sunday afternoon, I did all the holiday washing and ironing, watching 16 Days of Glory, which is the official film of the Los Angeles Games in 1984. It is 4.5 hours long.
Good grief.
It is a long reflection of the LA 84 Olympics. So Sunday night, my youngest child comes in to me, my youngest daughter, says, "Dad, can we have a movie night? Can we watch a movie?" And I said to her, "Yeah, do you want to watch one of the Olympic films?" And she went, "No, Dad, the Olympics are boring." So I'm just putting this out there. I've got a 10-year-old who, if I could, I would put her on the naughty step. Now tell us about the stink in Paris.
Well, I will just say as well that I thought the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that I went to see at the weekend was just slightly long, but it was nowhere near 4.5 hours. Let me tell you that. I think I would have fallen off the edge of the seat if that had happened. But yeah, in Paris, not great news, I'm afraid. Having been there and seen the River Seine quite recently. Did I mention that? I think I might have done. But World Aquatics have said it's clear more work needs to be done in Paris to safely stage the marathon swimming and triathlon in the River Seine at next year's Olympics and Paralympics.
The problem is it's not clear.
Exactly right. It's the only thing that isn't. The recent heavy downpours mean that sewage has once again been released into the rivers. We see it, unfortunately, in this country as well. And the water quality not deemed good enough for the women and men's 10-kilometre marathon swim test event at the weekend. It was all cancelled, with World Aquatics calling for organisers to work with the authorities further and also have a backup for a year's time. Because I remember talking about the heat wave when I was in Paris, and everyone was saying, well, what happens if you have a heat wave like the rest of Europe, and what plans are in place for that? Well, what happens if it rains, like it has been doing most of the summer here in Northern Europe, and they need to, unfortunately, continue to use rivers for non-swimming purposes. Now, you can argue they should be doing that, but these cities have been built for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that's just the way it is at this moment. It shouldn't be happening, and they need to sort it out. And it looks like World Aquatics have really clamped down. Now, in a fortnight's time, Michael, August 17th, it's the triathlon test events with elite races on the Thursday and Friday, with the para-triathlon on Saturday and the mixed relay on Sunday. And I've been speaking to one of the British athletes this week who's basically just said to me, look, I really just hope the weather improves and it's not an issue, because all they want to do is race on the Olympic and Paralympic course ahead of the Games next year. But of course, they all want to be safe as well, which is really, really important.
And they've had issues in Sunderland that hosted the recent round of the triathlon World Championship Series on Roker Beach. And a lot of the triathletes who took part in that, remember, there was elite events, there was also mass participation events.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of stomach bugs because of some of the readings, and some of the suggestions is that there's an E. coli problem there. So it's obviously something, as you said, that's not just unique to Paris, but is going on in a lot of these so-called developed cities and nations and regions of the world. You're listening to Anything But Footy. Now, you know I'm a big fan of British judo. I think they're going to do very well in Paris. They've announced the appointment of Jerry Gartieri as their new chair. He succeeds Ronnie Syers, who stands down later this year when his term comes to an end after 12 years of service on the board. 8 of those as the chairperson.
And the World Athletics Championships is coming up in Budapest in just a couple of weeks. And the Ukrainian team, Michael mentioned them at the swimming earlier, the Ukrainian team for the athletics has gathered in Slovakia for a final training camp before travelling to Hungary. World Athletics Ukraine Fund and the International Olympic Committee's Solidarity Fund have combined to provide training camp accommodation for 40 athletes and officials. We, of course, wish them well.
World Athletics has appointed a new director of communications. It is Jamie Fox, following a worldwide recruitment process which began in March this year. The 46-year-old, he looks much younger, by the way, was selected from a strong list of 140 candidates from 19 countries. Jamie used to have roles with British Athletics, West Ham United and Red Bull Racing. He also acted as a consultant for Australia Athletics as well. So seems like an excellent appointment by World Athletics, Seb Coe, John Ridgen and the group in Monaco.
Yeah, we wish him well. 36 women and men have been named by England Hockey as squads of 18 for the Euro Hockey Championships in Mönchengladbach in Germany from the 18th to the 27th of August. Commonwealth Games champion Holly Byrne-Webb will captain the England women, and they face host Germany in their opening match before facing Ireland and Scotland. David Ames leads the men's team in Group A alongside Belgium, Spain and Austria. And as you would expect, Michael, winners qualify a place at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games.
Requesting John Cushing's permission to mention football.
Go on.
Congratulations to England's women's team, who have reached the quarterfinals of the World Cup, taking place in Australia and New Zealand at the moment. I mention this because you talk there about hockey and the winners qualifying a place at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. You remember Team GB had a women's football team in Tokyo. That was courtesy of the fact they did so well, or England did so well at the previous World Cup. But it's not going to be the same this time around because there are going to be Olympic qualifiers as part of the UEFA Nations League. So no matter how well England, the Lionesses, do at that Women's World Cup football at the moment, it doesn't automatically guarantee a place for Team GB at the next Olympic Games. So we'll keep our eye on that for you. And then we have to be anything but footy and put that cross through it or whatever we did on social media before.
We had to hide the microphones when you went to interview people.
Well, yeah, it was quite awkward. I went to interview about 6 or 7 members of the squad in Birmingham when they announced the team, and the press office from the British Olympic Association kept saying, "This is Michael from Anything But Footy." And no, understandably, the squad were looking at me a little bit suspiciously. But anyway, I think we got there.
I think we got away with it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to keep you in touch on that football qualification, but we will, of course, let you know right here. And for much more about this summer and what a summer of sport, we've just talked about a World Cycling Championships, which is ongoing. We've got a World Athletics Championships in Budapest coming up very shortly. We've just had the World Para Swimming in Manchester as well. Check out our sporting calendar. That's on our website at anythingbutfooty.com. You can also read our thoughts there with our latest blogs. And as ever, you can get in touch anytime. You can go to X, which is X-Twitter,
X
at
marks
Anything
the
But
spot.
F. Or you can also go to Anything But Footy and find us on Instagram, Facebook, and we're also on
Sports Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.